first mistakes women must never make in love. There are truths that pierce through the illusions we build around love, truths that many women avoid because they are too painful to confront. Yet, the moment you see them clearly, you cannot unsee them. One of those truths is that too many women beg for love, lose themselves, and ignore the danger signs, only to wake up years later with nothing but regret. This is not just about relationships. This is about dignity, self-respect, and the spiritual law that you cannot receive peace from outside if you have abandoned it inside. Love that costs you your freedom is not love. It is bondage disguised as affection. Welcome to Buddha Story, a place where we look at the human heart through the timeless lens of Buddhist wisdom. Today we will speak about the first mistakes women must never make in love. And I warn you, some of what I will say may shock you. But if you allow these words to sink into your soul, they might save you years of heartache. Before we continue, remember to subscribe to the channel. Your support gives us strength to bring more teachings and stories that can transform your life. Let us begin with the first mistake: begging for love or attention. Imagine a woman who wakes up every morning with her phone in hand, waiting, hoping, almost praying for a message from the man she loves. She texts first, she arranges every meeting, she reminds him of his promises. And when he delays, when he is cold, when he forgets, she convinces herself that tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow is always the same. In the Buddhist way, this is clinging. It is the grasping that creates suffering. Just as a hand clutching fire cannot escape being burned, a heart that begs cannot escape being broken. True love does not require pleading. True love comes as naturally as the river flows. The story of Amara, a young mother in ancient times, shows us this truth. When her only child passed away, she was blinded by grief. She ran from teacher to teacher, begging for medicine to bring him back. At last, she came before the Buddha, who told her to find a mustard seed from a home untouched by death. She searched every house in the village, begging at every door. But every family had tasted loss. Exhausted, she returned and realized the truth. Begging cannot change what is destined. Pleading cannot bring life from death. She accepted impermanence, and in that acceptance, she found peace. Just as she could not beg for her child's life, so too we cannot beg for real love. It either flows freely or it is not love at all. The second mistake is losing yourself in a relationship. Many women enter love full of light. They are vibrant, independent, alive with hobbies, friendships, and dreams. Yet as time passes, they begin to dim their own flame, believing that devotion means erasure. They stop painting, stop writing, stop meeting friends. They give everything to the man, until one day they no longer recognize the woman in the mirror. In Buddhism, this is not balance. This is falling into the extreme of self-abandonment. The middle way teaches us to walk between devotion and selfhood, to love fully without losing our ground. Consider the story of Liana, a woman who devoted her life only to serving her husband. She ignored her meditation, her practice, and her own calling. She thought her worth was only in pleasing him. When he passed away suddenly, she was left hollow, with no path, no practice, and no inner strength. Only when she returned to the Dharma, when she remembered herself, did she find peace. Her story whispers a truth across the centuries. When you lose yourself in love, you lose the very essence that makes you lovable. The man may admire your devotion for a season, but when your inner light goes out, so does the attraction. To truly love another, you must remain whole. The third mistake is ignoring the red flags. There is always a moment when the truth reveals itself. The harsh words disguised as jokes, the promises broken again and again, the temper that flashes without warning, the silence that leaves you anxious instead of secure. Many women see these signs and look away. They say, "He is stressed, he will change. Maybe it is my fault." But to ignore is to invite suffering. In Buddhist teaching, ignoring reality is ignorance, and ignorance is the root of suffering. There is a tale of a feared outlaw named Aran. He walked the land stealing lives, leaving villagers terrified. People saw the danger signs long before he became a killer, but they chose silence. They pretended nothing was wrong, hoping the storm would pass. It was only when the Buddha himself walked into his path, refusing to deny the danger, that Aran's life was transformed. The Buddha faced him with clarity, not excuses. This story is not about crime alone. It is about relationships too. When you ignore the red flags, you are like the villagers, hoping that pretending will change reality. But reality does not change by denial. It changes only when you see clearly and act wisely. Begging for love, losing yourself, ignoring the warnings, these are the traps that bind women to suffering. They are the mistakes that steal years of life, years of peace. And yet, the Dharma tells us the way out. Stop grasping. Stay whole. See reality as it is. These are not rules meant to restrict you. They are keys meant to free you. So let me ask you, dear listener, if you were faced with a relationship where the love was uncertain, where the signs of danger were clear, and where you felt yourself fading away, what would you choose? A. Stay, hoping that one day he will change. B. Walk away, even if it means standing alone to protect your dignity. Comment your answer below. Would you choose A or B? Your voice matters, and your truth may inspire another soul to awaken. The principles of value and self-love. There comes a point in every woman's life when she must decide whether to honor her dignity or betray it for the comfort of staying with someone who does not truly value her. Respect is not a luxury in love. It is the foundation upon which everything else rests. Without it, even the most passionate words turn hollow, and affection becomes nothing more than habit or manipulation. To remain in a relationship where respect is absent is to slowly erode the sacred temple of your own spirit. I once heard of a woman named Celine who spent years with a man who mocked her in public. His words were always wrapped in laughter, but they cut deeply. She convinced herself it was harmless teasing, yet each remark left her more fragile inside. She began to believe the names he called her, and her self-worth diminished. One day, as she listened to him dismiss her dreams before a group of friends, something inside her shifted. She realized that her silence had been teaching him how to treat her. By tolerating disrespect, she had given it permission to grow. That night, she walked away. She told me later that leaving was not an act of anger, but an act of reclaiming her dignity. Her story reminds us all that love without respect is not love at all. Buddhist teachings often return to the concept of right relationship. Just as the path requires right speech, right action, and right livelihood, so too does love demand that the relationship itself must support clarity, compassion, and growth. If a partner belittles you, dismisses you, or treats you as a convenience, then the relationship does not align with the path of truth. In such a situation, staying is not loyalty, it is self-abandonment. To walk away from disrespect is not failure, it is wisdom. The second great principle is never to accept less than you deserve. Many women stay in half-hearted relationships because they fear loneliness. They settle for a man who gives them scraps of affection, who never truly shows up, who keeps them as an option rather than a priority. They tell themselves, "At least I am not alone." But what they do not see is that such settling is the slow poison of the soul. It convinces them that minimal love is all they can expect, and it blinds them to the greater possibilities of life. There was once a woman named Helena who spent nearly a decade with a partner who never prioritized her. Birthdays passed unnoticed. Her needs were brushed aside, and whenever she asked for more, he would say she was demanding too much. She feared being alone, so she accepted it. But after he left her suddenly for someone else, she was forced to confront solitude. At first, it was unbearable. Then, slowly, she discovered that loneliness was not emptiness, it was freedom. She began to travel, to meditate, to write poetry. For the first time in years, she heard her own voice, and in time, she met a partner who cherished her. She told her friends that she had to walk through the desert of loneliness to discover the oasis of her own worth. The Buddha taught that each person, just like every being in the universe, deserves their own love and compassion. To accept less than you deserve is to forget that teaching. It is to live in contradiction to the truth that you are already complete, already worthy, already whole. When you accept minimal love, you live in illusion. When you demand the love that nourishes and respects you, you live in alignment with truth. The lesson is not only about men or relationships, it is about the fundamental way we treat ourselves. If you honor yourself, you will not allow others to dishonor you. If you believe in your worth, you will not accept being treated as less. To settle is to teach the world that your spirit is cheap. To walk away is to declare that your soul is priceless. The story of Leontine, a woman who endured years of emotional neglect, illustrates this vividly. She had grown up believing she must be grateful for any affection, no matter how small. She endured silence, neglect, and distance. Yet through her Buddhist practice, she came to understand impermanence and self-compassion. She realized that clinging to a loveless relationship was the same as clutching a handful of sand. The tighter she gripped, the more it slipped away. She let go. In that act of release, she found not despair but liberation. Respect and self-worth are not negotiable in love. Without respect, you will always be diminished. Without the courage to demand what you deserve, you will always be underfed. These truths may feel heavy, but they are also liberating. They tell you that you do not need to compromise your soul for companionship. You do not need to shrink yourself to fit into a relationship. You are already enough. In the end, the most sacred relationship you will ever have is with yourself. If you nurture it, if you protect it, if you honor it, you will never allow another person to treat you as less than whole. You teach others how to love you by how you love yourself. And when you finally embody that truth, the love that enters your life will no longer make you question your worth. It will reflect the dignity you have already claimed. This is the principle of value and self-love, to honor your soul so deeply that you cannot remain where there is disrespect, and you cannot accept less than you deserve. It is to live with the courage of knowing that you are worthy of the highest form of love, one that brings peace, respect, and fulfillment. And until such love comes, you will not trade your dignity for the illusion of companionship. Because in the eyes of the Dharma, and in the truth of your own heart, you are already whole.